I never imagined that betrayal would come from the very people who taught me what love and trust meant. The house I lived in wasn't just a building. It was my dream, built brick by brick with years of sacrifice. I still remembered the nights I skipped meals to save money, the overtime hours that drained me, and the quiet moments when I wondered if it would ever be worth it. But the day I finally held the keys, standing at my own front door, every struggle felt justified. That house was more than property. It was my pride, my independence, my proof that I could build something on my own. My parents had always favored my younger brother, Asen. It wasn't something they admitted, but it showed in small ways how they defended him, how they overlooked his mistakes, how they expected me to understand and adjust. Asen was carefree, charming, and irresponsible in ways that people somehow found forgivable. While I worked hard to earn everything I had, he lived as if life would always take care of him. Still, they were my parents. No matter what, I loved them. So when they asked if they could move in with me for a while, I didn't hesitate. I prepared a comfortable room for them, bought new curtains, even stocked the kitchen with my mother's favorite ingredients. I wanted them to feel at home, and for a short time it actually felt like a family again. Evenings were peaceful. My father would sit in the living room watching television, while my mother cooked and told stories from the past. Sometimes Asen would visit, laughing loudly, filling the house with noise. It felt warm, familiar, almost perfect. But slowly something began to change. It started with small, unusual questions. Is the house completely in your name? My father asked one evening, his tone too casual to feel natural. I looked at him, confused. Yes, why? He shrugged, avoiding my eyes, just asking. Then my mother began making comments that lingered in my mind longer than they should have. You should think about your brother's future, she said one afternoon. He doesn't have stability like you. I tried to brush it off, telling myself they were just concerned parents. But deep inside, a quiet uneasiness began to grow. One evening, I came home earlier than usual. As I stepped inside, I heard hushed voices from the living room. I paused near the door, my heart suddenly alert. He doesn't need such a big house alone, my father whispered. And once the papers are signed, everything will be settled. Asen replied. My breath caught in my throat. Papers signed, I didn't walk in. I didn't make a sound. I simply stood there, frozen, as a cold realization slowly took hold. Something wasn't right, and for the first time in my life, I felt like a stranger in my own home. That night, sleep refused to come. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, replaying every word I had overheard. My father's whisper, Asen's calm confidence. The mention of papers, it didn't make sense, at least not in a way I wanted to accept. These were the people I trusted more than anyone. The idea that they could be planning something behind my back felt unreal. But uneasiness has a way of growing when ignored. By morning, I had made up my mind. I needed the truth no matter how painful it turned out to be. On my way home from work that day, I stopped at an electronics store and bought a set of small security cameras. Nothing obvious, nothing intrusive at first glance, just enough to keep an eye on things. As I installed them later that evening, one in the living room, one near the main entrance, and one discreetly placed facing the study, I felt a strange mix of guilt and determination. Spying on my own parents felt wrong, but being betrayed felt worse. For the next few days, everything seemed normal. My parents followed their usual routine. My mother cooked, my father relaxed, and Asen dropped by occasionally, acting as carefree as ever. Watching the camera footage each night, I almost convinced myself that I had misunderstood everything. Maybe I was overthinking, maybe I had imagined it, but then, one afternoon, everything changed. I was at work when my phone buzzed, a motion alert from the camera in the study. My heart skipped a beat as I quickly opened the live feed. There they were, my parents and Asen, inside my study. I leaned closer to the screen, my pulse racing. My mother stood near the cupboard where I kept important documents. My father held a file in his hands, flipping through pages carefully. Asen paced around impatiently, his voice sharp and eager. Are you sure this is the right one? He asked. Yes. My father replied firmly. This is the property file. Once he signs the new document, everything will be transferred. The word hit me like a blow. To me, right? Asen said, a smile creeping onto his face, of course. My mother answered softly. He trusts us, he won't even think twice before signing. My chest tightened, and for a moment I couldn't breathe. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was real. I watched in stunned silence as my father pulled out another sheet, a document I had never seen before. My eyes widened when I noticed the signature at the bottom. It looked like mine, but it wasn't. He won't notice the difference, Asen said confidently. Something inside me shattered completely. They weren't just planning. They had already started. They were trying to take my house. Not by asking, not by convincing me, but by deception. Anger surged through me, hot and uncontrollable. For a second, I wanted to leave everything, rush home, and confront them right then and there. I wanted answers. I wanted to see their faces when I exposed them, but I didn't move. Instead, I took a deep breath and steadied my hands. No, if they could plan in secret, then so could I. Quietly, I saved the footage, every second of it. Because now I wasn't just looking for the truth. I was preparing for what came next. After that day, everything became a performance. I played my role, carefully smiling at dinner, asking about their day, even laughing at Asen's careless jokes. On the surface, nothing had changed, but inside, I was no longer the same person. The trust I once held so naturally was gone, replaced by a quiet awareness that watched every word, every glance, every movement. They thought I knew nothing. That was their biggest mistake. I began to act even more careless than usual. Some evenings, I would leave my study door slightly open, with important files resting on the table, as if I had forgotten to lock them away. Other times, I'd mention how exhausted I was from work, hinting that I didn't have the energy to check paperwork or deal with anything serious. "I've been so busy lately," I said one night, stretching as I sat down. "If there's anything important, just tell me. I trust you." I saw the look they exchanged. A brief moment, but enough. That was all the confirmation I needed. Meanwhile, I had already taken my next step. I met with a lawyer and showed him the footage from the cameras. He watched silently, his expression growing more serious with each passing second. "This is a clear case of fraud," he said finally. "But if you want to handle this without immediate legal action, you'll need to be smart about it." "I don't want to confront them yet," I replied. "I want them to believe they've succeeded." He nodded slowly, understanding. Together, we prepared a plan, one that would turn their own scheme against them. A few days later, exactly as expected, my father approached me with a document in his hand. "There's a small issue with some paperwork," he said, his voice calm but slightly forced. "Nothing serious, just sign this so we can sort it out." My heart pounded, but I kept my face neutral. I took the paper from him and glanced at it. It was the same document I had seen on the camera footage, the one meant to transfer ownership of my house. "Do I need to read it?" I asked, pretending uncertainty. "No, no." My mother said quickly, "It's already been checked, just a formality." Asen stood nearby, watching closely, barely hiding his anticipation. For a moment, I hesitated, just enough to make it believable. Then I nodded, all right. I picked up the pen, but what they didn't know was that the document in my hands wasn't the one they had prepared. Earlier that day, I had quietly replaced it with another paper, one created with my lawyer's help. It looked identical at a glance, but its contents were entirely different. Instead of transferring my house, it was a legal declaration stating that anyone attempting to manipulate or deceive me into signing over my property was knowingly committing fraud. And by signing it, they were exposing themselves. I wrote my name slowly, deliberately, feeling their eyes fixed on every movement. The moment the pen left the paper, I handed it back. "There," I said with a small smile. "Done." Relief washed over their faces almost instantly. My father exhaled. My mother smiled softly, and Asen. He couldn't hide his satisfaction. "It's finally settled," he muttered under his breath. I simply leaned back in my chair, watching them. They believed they had won. They thought everything had gone exactly as planned. But in reality, the trap had already been set, and they had just walked right into it. The house felt unusually quiet that morning, as if it already knew something was about to change. I stood in the living room, holding the file in my hands, taking a slow breath before calling them all in. My voice was calm, steady, nothing like the storm I had carried inside me for days. I think we should sit together and finalize everything, I said. My parents exchanged a quick glance before joining me. Asen followed, his confidence almost visible in the way he walked, like someone already claiming what he believed was his. We all sat down. I placed the document on the table between us. Let's just go through it once, I added casually. For clarity, my father nodded, though I noticed a flicker of unease in his eyes. He picked up the paper and began reading. At first, his expression remained neutral, but within seconds it started to change. His eyebrows tightened. His lips parted slightly. "What is this?" he murmured. My mother leaned closer, scanning the page. The color drained from her face almost instantly. "This isn't," she started, her voice shaking. Before she could finish, Asen grabbed the document from my father's hands, his impatience turning into confusion as his eyes moved rapidly across the text. I leaned back, watching them quietly. "Read the title," I said. Asen's voice trembled as he spoke. "Confession and admission of fraud attempt." Silence fell like a heavy weight across the room. "No, this is wrong," he said quickly. "This isn't what we— Oh, it is." I interrupted, my tone calm but firm. I reached for the remote on the table and pressed a button. The television screen lit up, and then the truth played out in front of them, every whispered plan, every hidden intention, every word they thought I would never hear. My father sat frozen, unable to move. My mother covered her mouth, tears already forming in her eyes. Asen's face lost all color, his confidence shattering with every second of footage. "You recorded us," he finally said, his voice barely steady. "Yes," I replied, "because I trusted you, and you gave me a reason not to." My mother's voice broke as she spoke. "We were only thinking about your brother's future, at the cost of mine." I cut in sharply. By lying to me, by trying to take what I worked for. No one answered. There was nothing left to say. I stood up slowly, feeling a strange calm settle over me. The anger, the hurt, it was still there, but it no longer controlled me. Instead, I felt clarity. "I gave you everything I could," I said quietly, "a home, respect, love, and this is what you chose to do with it." I picked up an envelope from the table and placed it in front of them. "You need to leave," I said. My father looked up, his eyes filled with regret, but the words never came. My mother began to cry softly. Asen didn't even try to argue. He couldn't meet my gaze. One by one, they stood and walked toward the door. And just like that, they were gone. The silence that followed felt different this time. Not empty, peaceful. Because sometimes, the sweetest revenge isn't about hurting those who hurt you. It's about protecting yourself and finally choosing your own worth over their betrayal.